by the rivers of Babylon. Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Hallelujah. Blessed be Yehovah, our King, who has allowed us to return once again. Thanking the Creator, our Maker, for life, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thanking the Most High for He is good and His mercy endure forever. Giving glory to the Most High God for life and for thanking the Creator for all of you who are here with us today. Sending out early Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there, and also praying that the Creator will continue to be with all of those who are downtrodden, the sick, the poor, the needy, the fatherless, the widow. Praying that the Creator will continue to be with all those who are sick, that the Most High God will bring His speedy healing to all of them. Also giving due respect to the leader of our congregation, Chief Prince Yehudah Ben Yisrael, praying that the Most High God be with him and bless him. My name is Chief Uziel Lewi. I'm one of the teachers of congregation CHOKMAH BINAH, or D.C.B, better known. We're located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. And we're open for service every Saturday morning from 11 a.m. The services begin till 2 p.m. and then later in the afternoon, depending on what the time of the year it is, we set up the start back time. So we give glory to the Most High God, and we thank the Most High God for another Tanakh review, as we will be going over the portions of, I believe, Devarim and We'et Kanan, and that will be done by none other than one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Great, Brother Hashem. First of all, let's give praises to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, and due respect to the platform on the spiritual leader, D.C.B platform, Chief Prince Yehudah Ben Yisrael, to the host Chief Uziel, to the Princess Chief, Rabbinate, Kohanim, Maureen, brothers and sisters, and visitors, greet you all in terms of forefathers. Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. I'll be covering two sidros. As you can see, I'm in the midst of traveling back and forth to various places. So they'll be covering two sidros, briefly highlighting some reviews. The first one, we enter into the book of Devarim, which is Deuteronomy. And the book of Deuteronomy, which is the last book of what they call the Chumash, the first 5 books. Some people say the Pentateuch, or some people might, say Torah, but as the 5th book of scriptures. And Deuteronomy itself, the portion I'll be dealing with for Devarim, which is referred to in Hebrew, is from chapter 1 going to chapter 3 and 22. The next one will be Kanan, which would be starting from chapter 3 and 23, going to 7:11. The Hop Torah for Deuteronomy would be Isaiah, the first Isaiah 40, chapter 1 to 27, and then it would go from and then they have a different well, I might have got that wrong. But anyway, Sephardic and Ashkenaz have different portions, verses that they added towards the end on a good note, so to speak. And Ekanon chapter, Isaiah would be the 40th chapter of Isaiah, going to the 1st to the 26th, 40th chapter, first verse, 26th verse. The Psalms for Devarim would be Psalm 137, and the Psalm for Ekanon would be Psalm 90. All right, so I'm trying to cover, highlight 2 portions of it briefly. And what's interesting is we go into this new book of Deuteronomy. In this book of Deuteronomy, you don't find, and thus spoke the Lord God unto Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy itself is really means a second law, a repetition of a law in the book of Deuteronomy. When we look at the book of Deuteronomy, we find in the word in Hebrew, Devarim, which means words. Or sometimes they have a play on the pronunciation of Devarim, which means bees. And sometimes, as a bee, though it might provide something sweet and honey, such as honey, bees sometimes could sting people, and some people are allergic to the sting, and sometimes it's life-threatening. So, as been pointed out before, that a man that say he's not a man of words have to spend plenty of time in the last part of his life elaborating on words in his own way about the laws in the Torah. But I just want to highlight a few things, and then I move on briefly. Since when I combine both sidros, I even be a little bit more brief on some of the topics in the sidro. So any questions that people might have that, if I'm able to answer, I'll do my best to answer it. So I'm going to just read opening lines in the book of Deuteronomy. And what's interesting, Devarim is always comes around Tisha B'Av. Before Tisha B'Av is you always had Devarim and that particular portion, and it concludes the last part of the 3 haftorahs of admonishment. And when we start with the last parts of the 3 haftorahs, we conclude with the last 3 parts of admonishment. So we spend 3 weeks again told about ourselves, our shortcomings, and admonish us. And from the thing where at Canaan, we have 7 weeks, which brings us all the way up to what they most people say Rosh Hashanah, but Yom Teruah in the book, where you have 7 weeks of the Haftorahs having something to do with comfort. So those 10 Haftorahs deals with the season more so, once again, than with actually the Sidra. Though sometimes you might make some correlations with the Sidra. What is astonishing that out the 3 weeks that we're being admonished for our shortcomings and wrongdoings, it takes at least 7 weeks for us to recover from facing and looking at ourselves and regretting what we really did. So when some people say they change, you wonder how long it took them to change. And if they say they changed instantly, then you wonder how sincere the change is. So here we just had 3 weeks of telling us about ourselves, and then we go into a period of time of Haftorahs, where it takes 7 weeks just to make us feel strong enough to say, I'm really repentant, I really made a change, I'm really looking for forgiveness. So those are some of the things to consider as we go through the book of Devarim. But I'm just going to read just a little bit about, and also sometimes the book of Deuteronomy is called Mishnah Torah, which means the second law, second instruction. But I'm going to start from the beginning. It says, these are the words which Moses spoke unto all Israel beyond the Jordan in the wilderness of the Arabah, over against Suf, between Param and Tophel and Laban and Chazarot and Dizahab. It is 11 days' journey from Harar unto Kadesh Barnea, by the way of Mount Seir. And it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, which is Rosh Chodesh, that Moses spoke unto the children of Israel, according to all that the Lord had given him, and commanding unto them, after he had smitten Sihon, the king of Amorites, and who dwelt in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who dwelt in Ashtaroth, at Edrei, beyond the Jordan, in the land of Moab. Moses took Moses upon him to expound this law, saying, All right. So now what's interesting, we got when this particular portion of Deuteronomy, not only know it's in the 40th year, but we also know that not only that when he decided to write and say these words to the people of Israel. All right. So that means that we know he died within the 12th month. Given this here, it took, for when we look at these chapters in Deuteronomy, the 34 chapters of Deuteronomy, basically a 5-week period that Moses spent expounding on Deuteronomy. There's a lot of questions I could bring up polls now, because he was told after the battle of Midian, the revenge children of Midian, that he was supposed to die, and yet read about Sihon and Og and those 2 Amorite kings that we had to destroy. So some people, have a controversy, but we know that both took place in the 40th year. Some people will say, well, which one took first? What happened first? Was it the avenging the Midianite, avenging the children of Israel of Midian, or this particular portion? So when you look at the text carefully, very carefully, then you know that the battle of Sihon and Og would had to have taken prior position first before the battle of Midian. All right, so it brings out a lot of points that you could observe just by looking at the scripture itself. All right, so one of the things that you have in this particular portion, I'd like to bring out that Moses again had to establish a kingdom on the other side. So when you're dealing with the book of Deuteronomy, we had one set of criteria of living in the wilderness while we left out of Egypt, as opposed to prepare a people to become a society and a stable, productive land. We had laws that was given to us in the wilderness that only could take place within the land. So a lot of times when you talk about seed time and harvest, planting and sowing, it doesn't matter to a people who's being fed their food every single day by the Creator, who don't have to worry about whether it's raining, whether it's drought, simply because they water and they food and they shelter over the covering, the elements, the climate, as always was conducive by the Creator. All right. So we have so naturally it's saying that it's not going to be enough just to live where God provides everything for yourself. You must also be able to provide some things for you upon your own merit. So just moving forward from that, Moses starts again. It says in the 9th verse, "And I spoke unto you at that time, saying, I am not able to bear you myself alone. The Lord your God hath multiplied you, and behold, ye are as are this day as the stars of heaven for multitude. The Lord, the God of your fathers, make you 1,000 times so many more as you are, and bless you, as he hath promised you. How can I myself alone bear your cumbrance, and your burden, and your strife? Get you from each of your tribes wise men and understanding and full of knowledge, and I will make them heads over you. And you answered me and said, the thing which thou hast spoken is good for us to do." All right, so now I just want to find go just one more verse in it, and it says, "And so I took the heads of your tribes, wise men and full of knowledge, and made them heads over your captains. I made them heads over you, captains of thousands, captains of hundreds, and captains of 50s, and captains of 10s, and officers tribe by tribe. I charged your judges at that time, saying, Hear the cause between your brethren, and judge righteously between a man and his brother, and the stranger that is with him. You should not respect person in judgment. You should not hear the small and you shall hear the small and the great alike. You shall not be afraid of the face of any man, for the judgment is God's. And the cause that is too hard for you, you shall bring unto me, and I will hear it, and I will command you at that time all the things which you shall do. So now, when we look back in history, Jethro gave him some ideas of how to administrate judges, and Jethro gave him with a criteria. So I'm not going to spend much time on it since I'm going to be covering two portions, but I ask you to go back over and see the criteria, the qualifications, the resume that Jethro had for those particular judges, and compare with what Moses is saying now and what he's able to produce and what the people is able to settle for. So a society without a system of judges, without a system of law, is a society that will be chaotic and won't live long at all, won't exist long at all. So by having a society with rules and regulations and righteous judges to implement and make sure that's adhered to, it makes a difference of establishment within it and preserve the longevity of that society. So as we go for, excuse me one moment. Excuse me one moment. Let me just step out. Just a second. All right. So as I was saying, that it makes a difference in the area of how well society. You could tell how great a society is by the laws that they keep and observe. So that's one area that we bring out in this particular portion. And then I like to bring another portion here, and when in the same first chapter, it says he brings out some of the shortcomings in it, and when he started admonishing them about the shortcomings and about their murmurings throughout the wilderness, but nevertheless the Creator still looked out for him. So and when we get down to the first chapter, 34th verse, it says, "And the Lord heard the voice of your words, and was wroth, and swore, saying, Surely there shall not one of these men, even this evil generation, see the good land." Why? Because when they sent out the go ahead on and look at the land, and he will repeat some of the history of it. They bring back an evil report. They didn't want to leave. And so he brings back and said, "But I swore to give unto your fathers, save Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He shall see it, and to him I will give the land that he had trodden upon, and to his children, because he had wholly followed the Lord. Also, the Lord was angry with me for your sake, saying, Thou shalt not go in thither. Joshua the son of Nun, who standeth before thee, he shall go in thither, encourage thou him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it." So Moses not only brought up the shortcomings of the nation of the people, and saying who was of that generation that wasn't of the tribe of Levi that was going to go into the land, and that was just Joshua and Caleb. Imagine, you the oldest man in your whole tribe, all your generation gone. Both Joshua and Caleb, the oldest man in their own particular tribe. Not necessarily the oldest man in the nation, but the oldest one in their particular tribe. And so as far as males go. So when we look at those areas there, we see some interesting things that he not only bring up the people's shortcoming, but he brought up his shortcoming in the eyesight of God. A good leader always not only acknowledge where a person might be weak at, but he also must acknowledge their own frailties, their own weaknesses. That's what a good leader normally would do. Those that's not such a good leader might not, feel the same. So I'm gonna skip on over, and we know about certain people that said the land of the Moabites is not to be attacked. We know that's we weren't supposed to fight them, but yet they was worried about us and tried to have Balaam curse us. Moses recalled that the Israelites were not to harass the Ammonites, which is also close relatives of the Moabites. But we had a problem with the Ammonites during the time of the period of Judges later on. We know what's interesting, I like to bring to the point of attention to the 3rd chapter of Devarim. In the 3rd chapter of Devarim, it says, concerning the conquest of all, then returned and went up the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, unto battle at Ezrael. And the Lord said unto me, fear him not, for I have delivered him and all his people and his land into thy hand. Thou shalt do unto him as thou did unto Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon. So the Lord our God delivered into our hand Og. All right, so now when we look at the battles that Moses had, Moses was, and also in this particular chapter, it describes how tall Og was by describing his bed. But what's interesting to know that even Moses himself had a fear of a particular man. And you say, well, why would Moses have a fear of a particular man when he met God face to face and he served God face to face? So why would he actually have a fear of a particular man? And he was human. And that's what people don't realize, that as a human being, sometimes, though you might have protection, you still have fear, that in the sense of, am I worthy of that protection? I mean, why should the Creator support me and help me at this particular time? So those are some of the things that consider, because the Creator told Moses, fear not Og. He never told him not to fear any other individual by name, in that sense. He told him to fear not Og. And you figure, the Egyptians and all them, he was a wanted man. He left. I know, he had to feel a certain way. We know that people are seeking his life, and we know that people sought his life. The Creator let it be known, all those that sought your life are dead. So why is it now that if he was saved and did all his wonders, and he's an emissary and been up and stood before God 3 times fasting, 1 for the first set of tablets, 2 for the sin of the golden calf, and 3 and gaining the second set of tablets? Why is it that at that particular time, that man that went through all those trials and tribulations was able to cause, have God have the ground open up and swallow adversaries that attack his authority? Why would he still be afraid of Og? So, and it's one of the things that to consider at this particular point in time, when you start to deal with this book of Devarim, we know automatically Miriam died. All right. And then you read that she died in the 40th year. You read also that Aaron died, and we have his death certificate, the only individual with a death certificate, and the month of which we actually still are in, which happen to means father. Why is it that he's the only one who we have the exact day of the month that he died, as opposed to Abraham, as opposed to Isaac, as opposed to Jacob, or Moses himself? We have his particular date of death, and a month that the temple was destroyed twice. And the Haftorah that goes along with this here is the last of the Haftorahs of admonishment. So I like to just go at the end and read about, I read the Psalms at the end, then I'm going to go and speak on a little bit of Econon. Now, in the book of Econon, it starts in the like I said, 3rd chapter, 23rd verse. And Econon itself means, and he besought, and I besought the Lord. All right, so, and it starts off to translate it accurately as it says in Hebrew. And I besought the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, thou hast begun to show thy servant thy greatness and thy strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth that can do according to thy works and according to thy mighty acts? Let me go over, I pray thee, and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that goodly hill country, and Lebanon. It's a play on the words Lebanon, which means white and purity in a sense. And we get to the 6th verse. It says, But the Lord was wroth with me for your sake, and hearkened not unto me. And the Lord said unto me, Let it suffice. They speak no more unto me of this matter. Get thee up into the top of Pisgah, and lift up thy eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward, and behold with thine eyes. For thou shalt not go over this Jordan, but charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him. For he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which thou hast seen. So we abode in the valley over against Beth Peor. Now, I find this, I often say it, and I don't think I can say it enough, that he was told not to ask anymore, bring up the matter anymore. A lot of the commentaries, say this would say, using the gematria, over 500 times Moses asked to go into the land. But Moses was told not to ask. When he's telling the people that at this particular time, would not you would think, well, would the people not ask on his behalf, pray on his behalf, since he prayed so much for the people? Well, what kind of relationship or rapport would you have with a man that prayed and saved you from so much stuff and led you through so many trials and tribulations and stood up for you, that no one out of 600,000 people, or 3 million for that matter, would stand up on his behalf? That I find very, very sad. And the root I bring out often is the word chain, grace, hate noon. And grace is something saying, I'm not trying to use my credentials. I'm not trying to use my former accolades. At this time, I just want to simply come in because of your grace for me. Don't look at my deeds that I accomplished to say that you owe me. So Moses was humble enough to say, I don't want you to let me in because I think you owe me something. I know what I did. I know I haven't earned anything on my own, but I need to come in. I acknowledge I messed up, and you angry with me because for their sake. For their sake, what do that mean? For the people's sake? Why am I paying for their mistake or what? Or you showing me, you treated me this way because the people themselves, if they say Moses got away with this, then perhaps I should be able to get away with it. As the closer you get to God, the more responsible you're held. You're held to a higher standard. So one of the areas that when we look at this particular thing, said he was angry with them for the people's sake. Could it be also that what role would Moses actually play if he crossed over into the Jordan? What would be his role? Would the nation ever be able to develop? And that's one of the things that, people always bring out, that if a person did their job well, any teacher did their job well, then the next generation should be self-sufficient. We should always focus on developing our replacements. We're not trying to be here forever. We're trying to help the next generation be sufficient. That's what we're supposed to always trying to do. So Moses, this is a lot of commentaries on it, a lot of discussions, and perhaps you might discuss it more with your leaders. But these are some of the things that we got to consider, that the people was upset when Dathan and Abiram were slain, when Korah was slain. And they said, you slew the people of the Lord. They said that at a rebellion 40 years ago. But yet, when Moses telling them this story that should be heart-wrenching, no one said, perhaps if we pray collectively together, maybe God will find, come about with a way where you'll be allowed to enter the land. That's and Moses teaching things that he know that in the wilderness, when the people's in the wilderness traveling for the 40 years, you really don't have a lot of merit that you created on your own. You're learning, you're hearing Torah, the priests doing what they do. You get up, the only work you do really is get your omer, feed your family, feed your flocks, and listen to the teachings of Torah, because the tabernacle's there. And that's it. That's all you do. From day in to day out. Collect the manna, feed your flock, listen to the teachings. That's all you do. Because there's not much you could do. The Levites, they doing what they do every day. The sacrifices that they offer, and certain sacrifices they could not offer because the torah, where you picking it up from? It's not yours. So there's a lot of things that's not being accompanied upon. That means that in order to be a godly individual, is not sitting back doing nothing but praying. It's about getting up and work as well as pray. We always say watch as well as pray, but we also mean work as well as pray. So he found out, and we said when he asked God at that time, and besought him, what he was talking about, you find that Aaron was being replaced by his sons. So if Aaron's being replaced, the priesthood is being put on to the next individual. You already have the new leaders of each tribe there. All right, so now Moses himself wondered who's going to lead the people. And you say, well, it must be a difference between the priest's role of leadership and Moses' role of leadership, and the other princess and chief role of leadership. So we find out a lot of things from those particular areas there. All right. But they encourage the next generation to replace you. Most people don't try to encourage the next individual to be better than them. But the Creator told Moses not only to encourage Joshua, but strengthen him, saying, look, he ain't all that he's meant to be at this time, though he's selected. But if God give you the vision, then he's going to make the provision. So he's saying, you strengthen him. Why you? Why not God? Why not the Creator strengthen Joshua himself? But why do you want Moses to strengthen Joshua? Why do you want Moses to encourage Joshua when we should be looking to the Creator himself? So those are some of the things to think about and talk about as we move forward. We warn about adultery. Moses speaks of the power of the righteousness of God as we get into it, this particular portion. But I'm going to skip all the way over to this last part. And when we talk about in the 5th chapter, when we speak about the Decalogue, as we refer to, skipping over the 3 cities of refuge and all that. So for the sake of time. So I want to focus on, I didn't want to skip too far. So I I did a little bit too far. Well, I got a moment. Yes, I got a moment. I'm gonna skip it. Too far. All right. So we're gonna stop. We're gonna come here and and within Econom, and we're gonna speak only on a couple of things in there that I must highlight, and I want to highlight the area of the tablets, the Decalogue. Not in the city of refuge, but I'm going to go into the Decalogue, and then I'm going to speak on the Shema itself, which is also within this particular portion. All right. So that's what I'll conclude with on this particular sidra. Now, when we look at the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments as it reads, and it's only two places in the scriptures where we have this format at. And I'm gonna start from the 5th chapter, and it would take further discussion amongst the various teachers. But it says, and Moses called unto all Israel and said unto them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and observe to do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. The Lord made not this covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. The Lord spoke with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. I stood between the Lord and you at that time to declare unto you the words of the Lord, for you were afraid because of the fire and went not up into the mount, saying. All right, so now he gave him history. Now you got a new generation, but he's speaking and saying this is some of the things that they can identify with and reflect. So everybody there could have some semblance of what took place at that particular point in time at Mount Sinai. So he's speaking on Mount Sinai about the revelation that was given at the Mount when we got what they call the Ten Commandments. We more like to say the Decalogue, 10 words, 10 statements. And here we're going to have a repeat of what's going on. So he's talking about, like, they know it, they remember it, and he's going to bring out a few points they're going to see a little bit different. And it said, and Moses saying, this is what was said. I am the Lord thy God, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, even any manner of likeness. Any manner of likeness, excuse me about that. Any manner of likeness, thou shalt not make unto thee any manner of likeness. Excuse pardon me for that distraction slightly. Of anything that's in heaven above, or that's in the earth beneath, or that's in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself unto them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth, upon the fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. All right, that seems accurate what we heard before. All right, but then the order is a little bit different. And thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. We heard that one before. For the Lord, no whole guilt is that take his name in vain. We heard that. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord thy God commanded thee. All right. And then it says, 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, and then thou shalt not do any manner of work. All right. Now, what we got here is a change, because when we get to the Sabbath day, it says 12th verse, to observe the Shabbat day. All right, Shema, as opposed to Zachor, which is to remember. And you say, well, okay, if Moses telling this story, and we go a little bit further in it, and it says, honor thy father and thy mother, as the Lord thy God commanded thee, that days may be long, and that that days may be long, and that it may go well with thee. All right, we heard that one before, but one of the interesting things is when we have little subtle changes in the wording here. Why is it in Exodus it says remember the Shabbat day, and here it says to observe the Shabbat day? All right, that's just something we heard right there. All right, and then it goes on further. We know that observing it is not just enough. To observe something, say, remember the remember something's not enough. All right, to remember something, I should say. When you remember the Shabbat day, okay, I know Shabbat, I know so and so, but I don't participate in it. But shouldn't that have been said from then, when we was told in the wilderness not to go out for manna on the Shabbat day? So why now, 40 years later, we get this new thing about Shema, which is guard, protect, or participate, keep it holy. In that sense, remember to keep it holy, as opposed to keeping it holy. Observe to keep it holy. Participation. God look for participation in the Shabbat day. A lot of people today figure the Shabbat comes. I know it's Shabbat. I'm just gonna lay low. That's it. Oh, I know it's a Shabbat. I'm gonna just do what I do anyway and sleep it through. Participating in Shabbat is making a contribution to making it beautified, making it a delight. So those are some of the things that is relative. You just can't just remember it, but you got to be a participatory in it and try to help, bring, show the beauty of Shabbat. So when we go further, and it says what I like to bring round to is that these words, the 19th verse, these words the Lord spoken to all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of fire, of the cloud, and of thick darkness with a great voice. And he went on no more, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone, and gave them unto me. Okay, and it came to pass when you heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, while the mountain did burn with fire, that ye came near unto me, even all of the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, behold, the Lord our God hath shown us his glory, his greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that God does speak with man, and he liveth. All right, talking about man liveth. So now, that was a great miracle in itself, but that's not the part I want to focus on. There's just so much here that could be elaborated on, but I just want to focus on and get you to discuss this even deeper. Is Moses saying what he said here in Deuteronomy is what God said then? That's what the part I want to bring out. So we read the difference in the wording in this particular portion. When we have Exodus, the 20th chapter, side by side, we read the difference. What Exodus shows, and it says, and the Lord spoke all these words, and this is supposed to be exactly what God has said. And then we have what Moses saying that God said. So, but Moses saying that God said it. So is he telling an accurate story of it, or subliminal story of it? Or was God, the voice of God is so unique, so different, that the people know nobody else can imitate it? Could it be a possibility that God could say certain things in certain ways? Well, there's nothing impossible, but I'm saying when we come to our analogy in our own finite mind, that God said both observe and remember at the exact same time. we think about the voice of God and we think about a human voice. One of the things about a human voice, we must pause and take a breath most of the times between syllables. We must breathe while, we must hold our breath and then take a breath to be able to breathe to continue talking. The Creator does not run out of breath when he speaks. When the Creator speaks, his word go out and does not return void. We, as a human being, when we speak, we could get an echo, and our voice only travels so far. But the Creator voice penetrates everything, so it's no such thing as a soundproof room when the Creator speaks. So those type of things, and then are we able to, conceive all of it at one time? We say we didn't want to hear it because it was just too powerful. Not just the scenery, but also what we actually was experiencing at that time, as far as that voice. Moses saying, could it be possible the part you did hear and the part you didn't hear was all said then, but you really couldn't conceive it because you were so busy in a panic-stricken state. So you heard it, but didn't really realize it at the same time. So that's all I'm going to say in that particular portion. My last portion I'm going to skip on through just the same time is the Shema, which is I find another interesting thing in Canaan. And it starts in the 6th chapter and goes into that's 4th verse. And the 4th verse says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And that 4th verse is almost like everybody with they know very little Hebrew know the term Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Everybody know that pretty much by heart, as almost like people say, "Si Senor," or "we," for us, French or something like that. Everybody tend to have those understandings. So everybody had to have those the same understanding of certain languages. But here, what's unique, as I've said in the past, is that the national cry, and that most observant, people that follow the tradition, try to make sure that's the last thing on their lips if they're leaving out, making transition from this world. That declaration of, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." Now, the word echad in Hebrew, though it means one, but being the languages had one word that can mean many things, we first could say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, is alone. Our God is alone." So not just talking about his unity, but to say that, that Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is alone. Now, I spoke in the past that sometimes people make an emphasis on echad as opposed to, and then put that what we say in English, D sound to the letter, as opposed to the resh sound, which would be echad, which means after. So it changes the dynamics of the meaning when it says the Lord our God, the Lord is after. After what? Other gods? He's a new guy? He just hitting the scene? Or what? So when we talk about the tetragrammaton in the front, when the tetragrammaton is the name of the 4 letters YOH WAH, we ain't saying that, we saying that there's no one around but him when we say that. And it's only him. But in the commandments, it says there shall not be no other gods after him. That means we make up other gods. When this says that there's nothing that you try to bring to try to say, all right, you got one big God and you got these other little gods we coming up with, because we got to say we got to have somebody that we could identify with. No, the Creator letting you know there's no other gods after him when he spoke at Mount Sinai, and that you might bring up and make up your own gods, which is not a God. So that, not saying that there's a God that exists. Now, one of the other things is that when we look at the Shema in Hebrew, in the Hebrew text, those that read Hebrew, you'll find that in some of the Masoretic texts that and when you look in the Hebrew side on the scroll itself, that the letter, Ayin in the word Shema, which is the last letter of that particular, three letter word, and the last letter Akkad, which is the last letter of that three-letter word Akkad, which is the Ayin and a Daleth, it are larger. Now we know sometimes in the Tanakh we have some letters that's larger than others, and we got some letters that's smaller than others, but we never have two letters that's larger than one another than other letters in one sentence. We never have that throughout the whole Tanakh. Either have a letter over here, maybe large, and then maybe another letter somewhere else that's maybe large or small, but you never have two large letters, the Ayin and the Dalet, as large letters in one sentence. That's unique in itself. Point your attention to it, and it's there to point your attention to it. And also that the word, that those two letters together, Ayin Dalet, spell the word aid, which means witness. We're supposed to bear witness that that's what it is, that there's only a God that stands alone with no other that even exists. We're supposed to be a witness there. And what's unique about it, that when we get into the Shema, in this particular portion, which I'm not going to be able to go through now for the sake of time, is that, but I ask people to look at it in totality and what we say in the prayer every day, because we declare the Kriyat Shema twice a day. Though you might have three prayers that we consider done within a day, which is Shachari, Mincha, and Mariv. Those three prayers. But the Kriyat Shema, the saying of the Shema is done actually twice a day, which is part of our call to prayer. And it's only done twice a day. Traditionally. Now, I'm not saying that you can't say it more, but I'm saying traditionally that's what is done at the minimum, twice a day. So when we look further into that word, Ayin Dalet, just to reverse it, just to turn it around, as it's Dalet Ayin means knowledge, knowing, Da, which is to know. We say Da is knowledge. All right. So Da is knowing. So we must know. Not only bear witness, but you only can witness to what you know and testify to what you see, as the old expression we had coming up. We saw, the mountain smoking, our ancestors, and we saw, the sound of the thunder. We saw the thunder and the lightning. We saw sound. We saw things, and we heard. And yet it's saying that in order to witness something, you got to have knowledge that it even exists in order to be witnessing things. So it's a lot in the word Shema, Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That Ayin Dalet and transpose Dalet Ayin for knowing. And then when we read the Shema in the prayers, we find out, one, it focuses on, it's like in the reverse. They tell you about teaching your children, buying up, for a sign in hand and teaching your children this and that, the other. And then it goes in reverse order in the second part of the Shema. And one of the things is, one, you focus on one aspect of teaching, and you focus on another aspect of doing. So they both must be combined. You just can't teach and don't do, and you can't just do and don't teach. It got to be a combination of both. So when you look at the Shema and its prayer books and pretty much in the scriptures as we read here, then you're going to find that one spot just transpose what the first part has did to show you that they're both equally important. And that's the same thing I'm bringing on in reference to observing Shabbat and remembering the Shabbat. So that's what I'm going to stop on in the particular Sidra. The Haftorah I ask people to go over and look at. So this begins the first Haftorah of comfort when you follow on the Haftorah for Ekanan for the 7 weeks. And I'm going to the Psalms 137 first that goes along with the Sidra Devarim. So in Psalm 137, which is a pretty popular psalm, and it's a psalm about captivity. And it's a psalm when we was getting ready to go, and some of us were already in Babylon, and some of us on our way marching to Babylon. So this is a psalm that points out those particular aspects of us messing up in the land. So the 137th Psalm goes, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept, when we remembered Zion. Now, Zion is like a poetic name. It's really not an absolute place of in the book. In the book, not actually an absolute place, but it's a poetic name referring to those particular areas of our particular teachings. For us, our land, poetic name for our land. Everybody got poetic names in their family, different names, pet names, as we call it. So, but it says, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept. Why are we crying? Why are we weeping? And it says, when we remember Zion, upon the willows in the midst of thereof, we hung up our harps. Now, you go into captivity. This referring to the Babylonian captivity. Now, this Babylonian captivity, just for the since bringing this out, this is actually the first captivity we went into as a people. Egypt was not a captivity for us. Egypt was a place where we was incubated as a nation because we was invited down as guests. But the first captivity for the nation of Israel is actually Babylon. And you notice captivity is different from annihilation. So now in this first captivity, here, when we left Egypt, the women brought the harps. The tambourines, the tambourines, when we left Egypt. Here, they go into the captivity, not coming out of a place where they was held in bondage. Because being held in bondage is not the thing. Captivity means that I'm taking you from one spot and put you in a spot. So it is they coming from another spot out of bondage with musical instruments. The women's did to sing and praises for whatever it is and jubilation, because they knew they was coming to do a sacrifice at Mount Sinai. Here, the men going into captivity, bringing in musical instruments. What are you going to play? What are you going to sing? And they said they hung their harps on a tree. Why bring them in the first place? This is something to talk about and investigate a little bit further. But there they that led us captive asked of us words of song, and our tormentors asked of us myrrh. Sing us one of the songs of Zion. Now, that's in the 137. We're going to get it starting in the fourth verse in a minute. But one of the things when we look at is that why is it that it took you that far you travel that far in the captivity. When you reach the rivers by the rivers of Babylon, you're a long ways from Israel. And only then you remember Jerusalem. Only then you remember the land of your nativity. Only then you remember how precious that spot was. When you done traveled that far on foot, it's not a flight, and it's not overnight. And then you decide to say, look, I'm gonna hang my horse up. So let's show you that how far we went down. And the captain said, we want one of the songs of the land. Why? The jug at us? You know, because you say, well, if you're a captive and you got your musical instruments, just sing us a song about that land that we done snatch you up out of. That's really insulting. You know, and they only ask after you hung up your harps if we follow any chronological order in this song. So that's the jug at you. What you bring them for in the first place? What you need them for? I mean, you know, how many Babylonian songs you know? How many epics of Gilgamesh and things like that and things you could come up with? So we want you to sing us one of the songs that make you happy to be a slave by the rivers of Babylon. Now, as we retort in the 4th verse, what does it say?
Verse 4 reads, how shall we sing Yahweh's song in a foreign land? If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning.
Hold on right there. Before we go any further, we just read in the beginning of the song, we just remembered. We just remembered at the beginning of the song. You know what I mean? Then we sat down, we cried. You know what I mean? We remember at the beginning of the song. All right? You know, we sat down and we wept. So now we're going to tell the captives, you know what I mean, we can't sing a song of God. God's song, not our song. It's the Lord's song. And everything we sing is for the purpose of the Lord. So we remember God's so great at this point in time. And remember now, this is the last of the admonishment. This goes along with Devarim, this particular song. So it's the last hardcore stuff. And to show the irony, how far we could fall, that we're going to talk about if I forget thee, O Jerusalem. We forgot him. We only remember him right then. And that's when we decided to hang up the lyres, the harps. So this show you what sin and evil could do and cause you to have such a reprobated mind. But anyway, let's see what go on from here.
Verse 6, it reads, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I remember thee not. If I set not Jerusalem above my chiefest joy. Verse 7, remember, O Yahweh, against the children of Edom the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, that ought to be destroyed, happy shall he be that repayeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dashes thy little ones against the rock. Hallelujah.
All right. In other words, hey, they have a lot of regret now. A lot of problems. The Babylonian thing was no overnight fight. It took a while. And you know, when you make somebody take a long time to beat you down and you cause them problems and aches and pains, that when they finally get next to you, they're going to turn up the heat. They're going to turn it up. Because I done waited all this time for it, all this time, and just to get to this point, I'm showing you no mercy. So this is something to think. And then, you know, that's why they try to end on a good note on most of the Psalms of and Haftorahs of admonishment during those 3 weeks. And that's why it only took 3 weeks of admonishment to come on us. And it takes 7 weeks of us to reel back to say, I'm strong enough to say, really repent. I'm strong enough to repent. Because in the beginning, they forgot Jerusalem. And they remember them thousands of miles later, you know, great mile away, a lot of miles away. and then they hang up the harps. You carried it all that time. The enemies never took it from you. And when the enemies noticed that, then you called it the song of God. Then what was you singing prior to that? What were you doing the harps prior to that? Sometimes we wait till we get in trouble and they say, now, God, we need to talk to you. All right. But we're going to go to Psalm 90. And we'll finish it up with Psalm 90.
We're in the book of Psalms, Psalms 90, and it reads, Tefillah leMoshe ish ha-Elohim.
Okay, it said Moses, a man of God.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the thing is that this psalm is supposed to be attributed and written by Moses. That's what they say. So when we see that Moses besought the Lord, and it goes with the situation with Econon, we don't know what was his prayer like. We don't know how did he ask God, but we know he asked him in such a lengthy fashion, in such an often fashion, that God said, don't even bring it up anymore. So that means he had to speak more than once. And he had to speak in a lot of contents to try to say, could I get in the land? But when we read Deuteronomy and we read that with Econon, it sounds like, I besought the Lord at that time, that was it. And he said, don't bring it up no more. So now we're going to read a prayer that's attributed to Moses, supposed to be emulating somewhat, and we get some idea what Moses might have said on his behalf, trying to extend and get grace, and not on his accolades, but only on what God can give without him saying that, God, you owe me this. All right. So this is one of the things here that we look at when we talk about a prayer of Moses. Now let's see some of them. And it said, God has been our dwelling place in all generations. All right. So that's what it's saying. We dwell in the Creator. That's something to consider. We're going to number 2.
Verse 2, it reads, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. And
that's something that's saying, you still God. But a lot of times, I hear this saying, and then I bring it up, that God don't need us as a people. If God don't need us as a people, and I say this here, discuss it more, with your various teachers. If God don't need us as a people, then why are we here? We got to always ask that question. Why are we here? And God don't need us. He could choose everything else. Now, the need that God has for us is not the need that we think people would need us for. So that should be the thing to explore, because God is self-sufficient. So why would we be here in period if there was no such need for mankind and people such as the Israelites? But it's going on. That's just something to ponder as we go forward. All right.
Verse 3, thou turnest man to contrition, and sayest, return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as asleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up, and in the evening it is cut down and withereth.
How about that? That means right in there. You have a lifespan, just like grass, like flowers of the field. You reach your zenith, and then you're on the decline. All us guys that's in the senior citizen area, we say, man, I know, boy, I used to be able to run, man, and jet down here and jump these flights of steps and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm careful on each and every step I take. So and you notice that you say, well, I don't take the chances I used to take. And so when he's saying the frailty of a man, our lifespan, it's not even nothing to marvel at. So it's not, and what he's saying, 1,000 years, it's like a day in the sight. No man we read about lived to be 1,000. The closest we got was Methuselah, and he lived 969 years. We don't know what he did for the 969 years either, but live. We don't have a clue, but live. So he had to do something somewhat okay to live that long. Can you imagine how many stories he could have told? Being his father was named Enoch, and Enoch walked with God for 300 years, not 2 years, not 50 years, but 300 years. That's 6 Jubilees that Enoch walked with God. So that means 65 years. I wonder how Enoch was living before that 665 years prior to that time. What kind of lifestyle he had before he decided to say, well, Methuselah's born now, my life going to change. So this is some of the things to say, that we can't marvel at our lifespan and how long we live. We only can marvel how well we live, and more people will marvel at that than we would. Could that be a testimony? But let's go a little further. What it says?
It reads,
7.
verse 7, For we are consumed in thine anger, and by thy wrath are we hurried away. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. All our days are passed away in thy wrath. We bring our years to an end as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 60 years and 10, or even by reason of strength 80 years. Yet is there pride but travail and vanity, for it is speedily gone and we fly away.
All right there. Now look here. Moses. It's the prayer of Moses. So he's saying in this area here. Now we know Moses lived to be 120. He said, but we're talking about 70. First he's talking about 120. He's talking about 120 years. All right. So now, if we say 120 years, that's the time before the great flood came. When we get to 120 years. But 70, that's not a long time. That's not a very long time. Though when you're young, it seems like it's forever. But when you're getting close to there, it's not a long time at all. And you're saying, well, after I get 70, it said by reason of strength 80, then you got to say, how much more time I have in the earth. And you look at your accomplishments and you say, I'm not satisfied with what I did. Most of us is never satisfied with what we did thus far in life. And one thing I always tell people, is that we should be grateful for every day we're alive, because everybody that died had a plan for the next day. They had a plan for the next day, but they didn't get a chance to implement that plan. Moses had plans of crossing over. Moses wanted to get on the other side of that Jordan. I done taught about planting. I done taught about sabbatical year. I taught about the terumah. The heave off and the wave off, and I didn't get a chance to do any of that stuff that I taught. So my plan was to be able to implement that stuff. No one ever lived in life without a plan beyond their life. That's something. And when we consider that, that should keep all of us humble in that sense. But let's go and go about it. When we talk about 70 and by reason of strength 10 years. So that's why I'm also want to segue about elders. Most kings didn't live that long. Most kings died in their 60s. The majority of our kings in our book died in their 60s or less. And you could tell by when they hit the throne, what age they hit the throne, and how long they reigned. That they didn't live that long in ancient times. So when people talk about 70, you really ancient. When you look at certain medieval periods, you find that people didn't live that long. in contemporary periods. You didn't find anybody live that long. Now you gotta have people who are going to definitely live long, much longer than what we read about here in the hundreds and all that. But at one period in time in history, people didn't live too long. So, how much can you accomplish? How much is available at your hands to accomplish? So, those are some of the things we got to look at, and then that just keep us hungry. I mean, humble, and that's why he complains about the brevity of life. It could continue there. 10.
Verse 11.
Yeah.
Who knoweth the power of thine anger and thy wrath according to the fear that is due unto thee? So teach us to number our days that we may get us a heart of wisdom.
All right there. You know what? One of the things is that we keep a record of our bills. You know, we keep a record of our paycheck. You know, we even keep a record of our assets. But do we keep a record of what we accomplish from day to day? You know, and do we compare it to last week? And do we compare it to last month? And do we compare it to next year? And yet we all approach the Yom Kippur together, those that's privy enough, you know what I mean, you know, that be able to reach that stage. And we reflect on Yom Kippur as a tax collector does and see how much we owe and how much we accomplished. You know, do we get any returns from what we did? So that's what Moses saying, that I need help in keeping a track of me. And most people don't say, I need help in keeping a track of what I do. But other people will definitely try to tell you, I kept a track of what you did. But that's not always accurate. Most times it's not. But for you to be able to honestly say, I can keep a track on what I'm doing, that's paramount. All right, let's read a little bit further and finish it out.
Verse 13, it reads, Return, O Yehovah, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. O satisfy us in the morning with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, according to the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory upon their children. And let the graciousness of Adonai, our God, be upon us. Establish thou also upon us the work of our hands, yea, the work of our hands establish thou it. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right, one of the things that he ends at is that when he talk about, you know, make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us. All right. So Moses saying, at least make the number even. Don't let my times that you beat me down outweigh the times that I did good, got good out of it. So, and that's where, you know, they had this song that people mostly say in funerals and in churches, you know, I had some good days and I had some hills to climb. All right. And so when they talk about I had some good days and had some hills to climb, but you know what I mean? But when they look around and start to weigh it up, you know, they have more good days than bad days. So Moses said, look, I know I get beat down here. I know I got beat down there. But if anything, at least let the balance sheet balance out, that I could say. And then you notice that he's looking for the good to come behind the bad, not the bad coming behind the good. And this is a testimony behind it, that I'm looking for things to get better as we move forward. So I never reflect on those the good old days. I'm still here. That don't make sense to me. Well, I should say those were the good old days and I'm still here. What I'm trying to do now. You know, I can't relive the past. If anything, I'm trying to make the future better. And that's what we all supposed to be trying to do, trying to make the future better. So as we go through these things of comfort, you know, we need what they call psychological therapy from the book, in a sense of approaching that particular time of Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur in order to be able to enjoy the joy of Sukkot. So that's what we're trying to do. Hopefully, the things I share was worth listening to. Any mistakes by my own, and any comments, leave it in the chat, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And once again, any mistakes by my own. And support the D.C.B channel. All right, Shalom Aleichem and early Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik. Thank you for your wisdom and your understanding. We thank the Creator of heaven and earth for another day where we could bring forth and expound on His words. Hallelujah. May the Most High God, Creator of heaven and earth, be with you all. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.